We're going to start off with a few announcements, so come on down.
Good morning, y'all. How are y'all doing? If I can get it this way. Okay. Okay, so I want to real quick go over and show y'all how to access the SGA website. It's kind of a little funky because there are two links out there. One website's a lot older than the one that we're using now. So go ahead and follow along with me. So you'll just look up Bethel College SGA. The Wi-Fi in here is great. I promise it just worked like 5 seconds ago. Okay, so imagining that it's not gonna work, which knowing my luck, it won't. So there are gonna be two links that pop up. You're gonna have your usual Bethel website, like your Bethel website. There we go, perfect. So right here, thank you. I appreciate the support. And now this one's not gonna load. So when you go to that very top link, not the WordPress one, not that second one down, but that first one, if you scroll all the way down that page, you'll see the official SGA website in a little red link. So when you go there, you will access our website. There we have all of our branches of government listed with everybody who is in there. So if you want to know who your senators are for your dorm, here we go. So if you want to know who your senators are, you want to know who we are, that's a good way to do it. If you want to be able to access any of our forms, today, please, that'd be great. It loaded on there. Oh, that works. Okay, cool. So yeah, so you can see our office hours, and up at the top we have our branches of student government. We also have our anonymous feedback form, but up at the top, branches of government. So if you want to know who your senators are for your dorm, that's where you find them. You want to know who's in judicial, executive, etc. Also, we have our student organization tab. Oh yeah, we have polls. But our student organization tabs, if you want to see any of our RSOs, any of our clubs, this is where they'll be. They still need to be updated. If you are any club leaders in here and you have not talked to me, please email me ASAP. I want photos. I want to know what y'all are doing. I want to get that out there. And also feel free to update me throughout the year. I want to be able to get those up to date. Under SGA information, we have some of our official forms. This includes like our Constitution, our RSO manuals, ISR applications, yeah, official forms, that little tab there, yeah. And also, while we're there, at the bottom, we have our laptop request form and our winter clothing fund. So no questions asked. We know some of y'all are from the South or from other warmer climates. If it's cold and you need a jacket and you don't have one, please fill this out, no questions asked. We just wanna make sure you're warm this winter. Kansas gets pretty cold. And if you need a laptop, feel free to fill that out too. And then also we will be having, there will be a QR code on here. If you find it, go ahead and enter your email. You'll be put in a raffle for a $10 gift card. So after I leave here, I'll go ahead and post that, check that out. And also we have our Senate meetings every Tuesday at 11 a.m. That is in the SGA office, which is in the bottom of the ad building to the left of the women's restroom by Student Life. Please come and check it out. We have meetings every week. They alternate between regular and committee meetings, but you're more than welcome to come join our regular meetings whenever you're able. Tomorrow we will be discussing an ISR request in TPUSA, so if you are interested in that, please come join us at 11 a.m. tomorrow. All right, thank y'all.
Hey everybody, I hope everybody had a good weekend. So DivCo is hosting a movie night on November 7th, which is a Friday this week. It starts at 8 p.m. We are going to be celebrating Day of the Dead, which was November 1st, and then Day of the Saints was November 2nd. We will be watching The Book of Life, so it'll be in the projection room, which is in the old library. If you go down the stairs, it'll be there. So yeah, thank you.
All right, can I get the cultural belonging slide up, please? Maybe. Okay. Cultural belonging. The barbecue one. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I'm Tori. I'm the student fellow of the Culture and Belonging Department this year. The Office of Culture and Belonging is proclaiming November as Circles Month. There will be circles hosted for specific student groups during the month, and at the end of the month, along with the barbecue club. It'll be Thursday, November 20th from 5 to 6:45, located in the WAC atrium. This year's event is open to students, faculty, and staff, so everyone is welcome. This will be a wonderful opportunity to connect across campus before the holiday break. So let's come together in the community, celebrate the season, and give thanks for one another. So if you'd like to register, please scan the QR code, and hope to see you there. Thank you.
Hi, I'll make this brief because I know Luke is probably anxious to speak. I just wanted to remind you guys that we have chapel this Wednesday. We're going to have Roz McCommon. She is a Bethel College alum, and she ran a gospel choir here, so we're going to do like kind of a music chapel. So I'll see you guys there.
Could I get the donut flyer slide up, please? Cool. So, hi guys. You have all seen me all semester. You guys know what I'm here for. It's voting time. It's voting season. These are the last 2 days, though. We have early voting today until noon, and then tomorrow from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., all election polling locations will be opened. Don't forget, tomorrow is election day, so make sure you bring your ID, know where your polling location is, and very importantly, know who you're actually voting for instead of just going in there willy-nilly. I'm going to be set up outside the CAF tomorrow from 7 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., and I'm going to have a bunch of donuts to give out just as a reminder. So please see me then, and I encourage all of you guys to go out there and vote and actually do it. Your voice does matter, and these are important elections. So yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Trent Voth. Just reminding you that unless the speaker invites you to have a device out to do something on the screen, once we close the doors here at 11:10 to put devices away, or you will get credit taken away. So just giving you that reminder.
Thank you for that reminder, for all of our benefit, and for all of these announcements. We're also going to have one final announcement in the last 5 minutes of Convocation, in part to introduce our visiting artist, Roz McCommon. So we'll get to meet her in the last 5 minutes. Today's Convocation is a part of this year's Worship and the Arts Symposium activities made possible by the Reimer Bays Worship and the Arts Endowment and Dr. Rosella Reimer-Dirksen. The overall theme for this week is Preaching Good News in a Troubled World. We are incredibly fortunate to get to host as our keynote speaker for this symposium the Reverend Dr. Luke Powery, longtime dean of the chapel at Duke University and professor of homiletics, that means preaching, and African and African American studies. Dr. Powery is also an award-winning author who has published like 8 books, a sought-after preacher and a pastor who has served around the world. If you heard him preach yesterday at BCMC, you know that we are in for a real treat this morning. You can see Dr. Powery again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. up in the Ad Building Chapel, where he will deliver another address, and then following his address, we'll hear and discuss sermons from Jarrell Williams, Joanna Heriter, Catherine Gorzin, and Shauna Green. It will be a rich morning, and all are invited. 9 a.m. up in the Ad Building Chapel. For this morning, Dr. Powery extends the theme of preaching good news in a troubled world. Please join me in giving Luke Powery a warm Thresher welcome.
Thanks. Good morning. Come on, good morning. There you go. All right, it's a pleasure to be here for this special symposium. As you heard, the broad theme is preaching good news in a troubled world, and I'm going to come at that in a kind of different angle this morning. I want to thank all of those who made this series possible for Pam Thiessen, who's been the main contact, for Peter Grosen, who you just saw, Professor, and anyone else. It's a pleasure to be with you. And last night we heard, how many of you went to the choir concert? Okay, several of you. And it was called Bethel Sings. So, and I heard that that's the root of this community, deep roots of this community. So this morning through this presentation, I want to come at this broader topic thinking about the spirituals as good news in troubling times. And I'll say more about that in a second, but to get us going, I'm going to need you a little bit. Is that okay? Is that all right? All right. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. If you know it, sing it. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Why don't you stand and sing that? This little light of mine, sing it, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna. Everywhere I go, come on, Bethel. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Give yourselves. Come on, I knew you had it in you even at this time in the morning. There we go. There we go. And what I want us to think about in a twofold way in our brief time together is this first section. I think about the rise of the so-called spiritual gospel, and then I move to what I think of as echoes of the gospel from the spiritual borderlands. And so first, when we think about the spirituals as good news in troubling times, I want to enter it in this way. There was a book by Harvey Cox, who was a professor at Harvard Divinity School many years, and it's called and he called the book The Future of Faith. And in that book, he said that we are now in what we might call the age of the Spirit. And he said that because people were moving away and have moved away in many places away from the term religious, right? So people might say, I am a spiritual person, but not religious, as a way to kind of move away from institutional and doctrinal religion, but to start to emphasize a kind of way of life with the Spirit. We see it even today in higher education and theological education, seminaries, divinity schools, where there's a greater emphasis in Protestant seminaries on Christian spirituality, right, or spiritual formation. The other reason why Cox made that point was because the rise of Christianity, as you might know already, has shifted from the north to the global south. Or as one of my former colleagues at Princeton Seminary said, the church is turning brown and heading south. And so there's been a tremendous shift in worldwide Christianity, if you're not aware, where the rise of Pentecostal communities, or the majority of Christian churches in sub-Saharan Africa and numerous parts of Asia are Pentecostal. One of the largest Christian congregations in the world, the Yoido Full Gospel Church in Seoul, Korea, claims to have 480,000 members. And so we have this rise of Pentecostal charismatic movements in Latin America. But you may or may not know that James Baldwin, the writer, his father was a Pentecostal preacher. And he says in his essay, Down at the Cross, in his book, The Fire Next Time, he describes that Pentecostal experience in his father's church. He says, I've never seen anything equal to the fire and excitement that sometimes, without warning, fill a church, causing the church to rock. Now, I want to add that there are churches with this fiery flavor that may not only rock, but they roll. And what I mean is they roll in money, economic prosperity. And so connected to this rise in Pentecostalism is also the rise of what's been known as the prosperity gospel. How many of you have heard of that term, prosperity gospel? Okay, so in that theological school of thought, we're thinking about preaching, many of them come from spirit traditions, right? This is why I'm linking. I myself even grew up in what's called the Holiness Pentecostal tradition. But for many in this prosperity gospel realm, they link what it means to be spiritual to capitalistic material gains through consumeristic means. And what you've seen is the rise of preaching becoming a big business. Glamour and glitz are glaring through various media forms. Preachers are pimping the gospel for financial profits. We see that high-tech marketing, where an aesthetic of prosperity becomes an ethic of prosperity. And so this is proliferated all over the world, not just in North America. It's very popular, where what it means to be spiritual in many ways, it means to possess something, material goods. So the more material goods you have, the more you are obviously blessed by God. Some have called this a love affair with more. Okay, and memory social ethicist Robert Franklin put it this way. He says that there's this implicit prophetic ministry that's muted because of this proclamation of prosperity. And he says there's a crisis in the village. He says if most black preachers and other preachers for that matter are preoccupied with pursuing the bling-bling life of conspicuous consumption, then poor people are in big trouble. I want to add this morning, it's not just poor people that are in trouble, but that anyone experiencing existential pain and suffering on any level is in big trouble. This so-called spiritual gospel promotes a kind of pain-free religious experience. So pain is not seen as part of the gospel. And so you can't deny masses are following this. Books like Your Best Life Now. Or as Jonathan Walton once wrote, though in my mind God offered liberation from racial and gender injustice and capitalist exploitation, I saw other preachers seemingly get further with a Jesus who provided the keys to the kingdom in the form of a 4-bedroom house and a Mercedes-Benz. In 2006, there was an interview with the legendary preacher Gardner Taylor, who's now deceased. He was asked to assess the preaching scene. And what he says then is also true for us today. He says this, he says, sometimes Sunday, it seems as if preaching is a Sunday chamber of commerce exercise. Motivational speaking, which has its place, but it's an opium, but it's not the gospel. It's a kind of opium, a stimulant for people, which gives them a false notion of what life is all about. He says much of contemporary preaching doesn't prepare people for the inevitable crises of life. When we talk constantly about prosperity, well, life isn't constantly prosperity. It has adversities. It has difficulties. He says, of course, people want to hear it because candy is a very pleasant thing. My daughter, when she was small, I would suppose we could have given her candy morning, noon, and night, and she would have taken it morning, noon, and night. But soon she would have had no teeth. And soon we would have had no daughter, because candy's wonderful, he says. I love it. But one needs in one's diet more than candy. So when we're talking about Taylor's understanding of the prosperity message, he calls it candy, which means this type of preaching or theology may be initially sweet to the taste, but in the end, it's going to be detrimental to your soul. You're going to end up with no teeth because you need in your diet more than candy. And so I call this candy homiletical theology. It doesn't sustain people's lives in the end because it doesn't take into consideration what life is all about. The hardships and the pain tend to be muted in this bright, sunny gospel. And in my mind, it's a distorted picture of the gospel. If death and sorrow are ignored, I call call it an anorexic pneumatology. Pneumatology means the theology of the Spirit. It's an anorexic pneumatology with a thin theology of death. The prosperity preachers may be wise and right in taking the Spirit seriously, but I believe they're wrong in their practice of the Spirit because as far as I know, even as I preached yesterday, the Spirit led Jesus into a wilderness and Ezekiel into a valley of dry bones, which is a place of contamination and death. Thus, one might say, as a spiritual does, everybody talking about heaven ain't going there. And if I can riff that this morning, everybody talking about the Spirit ain't got the Spirit. And so now we want to move to the echoes of good news from the spiritual borderlands. This is where I see the spirituals coming in. I think it's an opportune time to glean from their wisdom to think about preaching good news in a troubled world in this age of the Spirit, what that might mean, but also what it might mean to preach good news. The spirituals are theo-homiletical paintings of the human soul in the color of music. And I argue that they are not just songs. They are actually musical sermons because they show what it means to preach. In one of my books, Dem Dry Bones, I argue and show in there this historical linkage between the creation of the spirituals and the creation and preaching events, worship services. Both spirituals and preaching and sermons are musical in that tradition. They're both textual, meaning they're both engaging the Bible in some way. They're contextual. They're appropriate for their times, their setting, and they're deeply communal in nature. One might even say that singing the spirituals preaches and preaching sings. Or as the queen of gospel music, Shirley Caesar, once said, I sing my sermons and preach my songs. So this spiritual homiletical tradition has much to offer us today about preaching good news in the troubled world. So what I want to do in the next little bit is play 4 notes that may echo in a fruitful direction for Christian preaching today. The first of all, the spirituals teach us that preaching good news sounds the note of the reality of human suffering. Soon will be done with the troubles of the world, the troubles of this world, the troubles of the world. Soon will be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God. No more weeping and wailing. No more, oh, no more weeping and wailing. No more, oh, no more weeping and wailing. Going home to live with God. So the spirituals The spirituals are spiritual because they teach us about the troubles of the world, right? Right in your neighborhood, right on your campus, in your dorms, right? Right in Gaza, right in Israel. Go down the line, right in this country. Troubles are brewing, are here in this world. And the spiritual homiletical tradition helps us understand, not just historically, but they tell us that it is faithful to preach human tragedy and death and suffering. That's a part of what it means to live with God. It's a part of what it means to live in the wilderness. The spirituals are musical memorabilia created on the anvil of misery. There's one hymn that says, "We have come over a way that with tears has been watered." We've come treading a path through the blood of the slaughter. Tears as the foundation of our spiritual life, of preaching good news, actually. That the blood of the martyrs is the seed of faith we hear in church history. For me, in thinking about preaching, the blood of the martyrs fertilizes the soil of our preaching. Every time we stand up and preach, preachers, we stand in their blood to preach. Their blood cries out from the pulpits. Suffering must be lived through. This is what it means to preach good news from the borderlands. Tell the truth of the suffering of the world. Tell the truth. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long ways from home. Do you know any motherless children? Have you ever felt like an orphan? Do you know somebody who is depressed and down who might sing that song? I tell people these days, you better find yourself a spiritual right now. If you don't know any, go find one, go learn one. Because the spirituals connect us to the way life is. The gospel connects us to the way life is through the spirituals, so we name the troubles. Honestly, theologian Sean Copeland says to pass over these sorrows imperils humanity as well as theology. And she says that, why? Because it's not only our cultural memory, human cultural memory, track the history through the ages, the trail of tears, even coming through the state of Kansas. Think about our Christian theological memory. Even that is drenched in blood. And it includes a God who suffers, right? That's the second thing. The spirituals tell us that preaching good news sounds the note of a theology of divine suffering. That's the truth. Calvary, Calvary, oh, Calvary. It's just one word, y'all. Calvary, oh, Calvary. Sometimes that's all it takes is one word to say what's on your heart and your mind. And that's what the spirituals do. Calvary, oh, Calvary. Surely he died on Calvary. The Toronto Blue Jays may need that spiritual right now. Don't you hear the hammer ringing? Don't you see the ice agents coming? Oh, don't you hear the hammer ringing?
he died on. Oh, surely he died on. Do you know anybody who died in your family, in your school? Surely Jesus died on Calvary. The spirituals. It's not just about the human suffering, but it's about a God who suffers. And sometimes, how do you express it? You just have to say, Calvary, one word. Because certain things happen in life, and that's all you can say. You can't say anything else. And so the spirituals say something about the agony and is being a part of God's story. That God in the flesh, Jesus Christ, never said a mumbling word as he suffered, bled, and died on a cross. When one sings the spirituals and listens to their sermonic discourse, you have to deal with a God who dies, because death is no respecter of persons. One spiritual says, death ain't nothing but a robber. The Christ dies. The well-known spiritual put it, were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they pierced him in the side? This is a part of our theological memory, and the spirituals propel us forward. Our theological memory is washed in the blood of the Lamb. Preaching good news in a troubled world reveals that preaching is not spoiled by tears, because even at the heart of the proclamation of the church is a bloody death. Think about communion. Eating the bread and drinking the cup of communion is a proclamation of the Lord's death. The Eucharistic table, that's what we get out of the Pauline literature. Every time is what James Cone would call a lynched word. He calls it, thank you, sir. He calls it a lynched black body. That Jesus died gangster style like all of the crucified peoples of the world. He was on crucified lockdown, confirming what one theologian, Jürgen Moltmann, says, that the Spirit does not make Jesus a Superman. And so through that lens of the cross, catastrophe, tragedies at the heart of gospel preaching in a spiritual key, death keeps it real. And we have to remember that there are no resurrections without crucifixions. The divine and human suffering, which are an aspect of God's story, are critical because they are theological roots of preaching. God enters the world and takes on suffering, not just regular suffering of all creatures that grow old and die, but the suffering of the innocent, persecuted by the unjust, the suffering of abandonment and seeming failure, the suffering of love offered and refused, the suffering of evil apparently triumphant over good. To avoid this kind of suffering is to ignore what it means to be human and what it means to proclaim an incarnate God in today's troubled world. Let me go to point 3. The spirituals teach us that preaching good news sounds the note of an ecology of community. Think about the larger context in which we live in, whether it's politics or something else, some other issue, polarized environment that we are in. Especially you drop the spirituals in and you find this communal ideal. Maybe you might know this spiritual. Get on board, little children, get on board. Little children, get on board. Little children, there's room for many more. Now, if you don't know it, now you're going to learn it. Get on board. Little children, get on board. Little children, get on board. Little children, there's room for many more. Sing it with me. Get on board. Little children, get on board. Little children, get on board. Little children, there's room for many more. There's room for many more. That's key. In the theology of the spirituals, there's always room. That's the spiritual theology. But one of the verses says, the fare is cheap. In the fair, get on board. Little children, get on board. Little children, get on board. Little children, there's room for many a more. There's always room. And one of the things that you learn in the spirituals is a deeply communal experience. They are our songs. If you know anything about the spirituals, there's not a particular author. You don't know who created the songs, really, specifically, a lyricist. They're called folk songs because they are songs from the folk, the people. There's no specifics. It's as if these songs are about the common good, and they can be viewed as collective exorcism of selfish individualism. So it's the deeply, I am because we are. You might have heard that before, but we're in this together, and you see it through the spirituals, not even in some of the themes that you might hear, but also in a kind of call and response that might happen when there's a leader, and then the community responds. Why don't you stand to your feet for a second? We're going to do this one real quick. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Then the verses are call and response. Look that man that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. The band is all dressed in red. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. Who's gonna trouble? God's gonna trouble the water. Only this side. God's gonna trouble. God's gonna. Come on. God's gonna trouble. Over here, only this section. God's gonna. The front row, come on. God's gonna. Hey, the wall. This side up. God's gonna. Yay. God's gonna. Everybody, God's gonna trouble the water. Who's gonna trouble? One more time, God's gonna trouble the water. Yeah, be seated. Deeply communal. And one of the affirmations is, and that was even in the Bethel Sings last night, the brochure about this idea that music brings people together. It's a coming together. And that's what we see in the spirituals, and it's profoundly a deep understanding of what preaching is. We're in this together. It says Hezekiah Walker, the gospel artist, I need you to survive. That's critical. And a crucial insight is, stretching all the way back to slave preachers, is that every human is a child of God. That didn't start with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that stretches way back in time, right? The deep sense of the Imago Dei. So this ecology of community. Let me come to the fourth note here, and we'll close this out.
The fourth note, and you already have been doing it, which I think we don't often think about it when it comes to preaching and thinking about that mode. So the spirituals teach us that preaching good news sounds the note of the viability of the practice of singing as a homiletical strategy. You better find yourself a song. It doesn't matter. This is not about how good your voice is, or many of you probably sing in the shower, right? And that melody means you are still alive. When you stop singing, you might as well be dead. And the spirituals help us live into the reality and the power of song. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says to sing. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says to sing. That's all the words. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says to sing, and obey the Spirit of the Lord. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says to sing. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says to sing. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says to sing, and obey the Spirit of the Lord. I'm gonna clap when the Spirit says to clap. I'm gonna clap when the Spirit says to clap. I'm gonna clap when the Spirit says to clap, and obey the Spirit of the Lord. I'm gonna stand when the Spirit says to stand, or when I say, come on, stand when the Spirit says to stand. I'm gonna stand when the Spirit says to stand, and obey the Spirit of the Lord. Oh, I'm gonna move when the Spirit says move. I'm gonna move when the Spirit says move. I'm gonna move when the Spirit says move, and obey the Spirit of the Lord. Oh, I'm gonna preach when the Spirit says to preach. I'm gonna preach when the Spirit says to preach. I'm gonna preach when the Spirit says to preach, and obey the Spirit of the Lord. Oh, I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says to sing. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says to sing. Bethel, sing. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says to sing, and obey the Spirit of the Lord, and obey the Spirit of the Lord, and obey the Spirit of the Lord. The singing. Singing is a vital and necessary response to situations of suffering and trouble. It's been said that in the cotton field, the machete was dull without a song. It's been said that the songs are free, even while in oppressive chains. It's been said that you can't sing and not change your condition. It's been said in the early church, he who sings prays twice. It's been said the gods will not descend without a song. It's been said to sing till the power of the Lord comes down. Singing was a sign of the slave's refusal to be stopped. It was a non-violent weapon against oppression. And the song itself, in the words of Pauli Murray, was hope in a weary throat. And so preaching good news sings, hums, chants, moans. Singing is possible and preferable in painful predicaments as a sign of life, a sign of hope, a sign of the presence of God through human voices and bodies. And so the spirituals show us that singing is a matter of life and death, revealing actually the weight of the ministry of preaching. Singing in a spiritual mode is not art for art's sake, to perpetuate a capitalistic and consumeristic society. Singing is life in the crucible of suffering and death. And historically, singing was living and life was a song. The spirituals help us understand that if we don't sing, we will die to the sting of suffering. There was much crying and screaming and groaning and moaning in Haiti in the aftermath of that massive 2010 earthquake, but there was also lots of singing. And Azizi, a 70-year-old woman who had been buried for a week in earthquake rubble, that she was in earthquake, they say it was 3 stories high from the ground. When they pulled her out of the rubble,
They're pulling her down now. She was seriously dehydrated, had a broken leg and dislocated hip. She was suffering. When they pulled her out of the rubble, she didn't ask about her 401k. When they pulled her out of the rubble, she didn't ask whether she had any unread emails. When they pulled her out of the rubble, she wasn't interested in all the social media noise about government shutdowns. When they pulled her out of the rubble, she didn't care whether her rescuer was Republican or Democrat. When they pulled her out of the rubble, Enazizi began to sing, literally. Her body was worn and her throat was weary, but hope and life were singing and preaching good news in a troubled world. In this spiritual key, we'll sing out of the rubbles of human existence. And so these 4 notes, the reality of human suffering, theology of divine suffering, ecology of community, and the viability of singing, they don't encompass the entirety of this spiritual theomusical corpus. Yet they help us hear what it might mean to be spiritual today in this age of the Spirit, as well as what it might mean to preach good news in the troubled world. And so what I've tried to do is, this has been a work in memory, even counter memory, to spiritual, economic, exploitative preaching practices. Most of all, I've offered a memorial to the many thousand gone, because we shouldn't forget the bridge that brought us over. Remembering, as someone has said, is the preacher's duty. And so to close this, I want to just read the very end, a portion of James Weldon Johnson's 1922 poetic ode to these creators of the spirituals, and it's called O Black and Unknown Bards. Near the end, he says, there's a wide, wide wonder in it all, that from degraded rest and service toil, the fiery spirit of the seer should call these simple children of the sun and soil. O black slave singers, gone, forgot, unfamed, you alone of all the long, long line of those who've sung untaught, unknown, unnamed, have stretched out upward seeking the divine. You sang far better than you knew. The songs that for your listeners' hungry hearts suffice still live, but more than this to you belongs. You sang a race from wood and stone to Christ. These black slave singers, these singing preachers without portfolio, preached far better than they knew, and their sermons still sing on today, and they provide pearls of wisdom. Those who are unlettered, the underside, the marginalized, the other on the borders, taught preaching quite unlike any seminary divinity school. We don't know their name or face, but they've contributed to our lives, to our world, to music, to preaching. I've remembered the dismembered to remember the preaching of the gospel. Their musical sounds of sorrow and joy are a haunting echo that still reverberates down the acoustical corridors of homiletical history. And as we hear the echo, may we try to tune our preaching and our lives to its particular key, so that we too may run the spiritual race from wood and stone to Christ. And as we run, sing, Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart. In my heart. In my heart. Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Powery. Music and singing continues throughout the week, and to introduce our artist in residence, Russell Adrian, choral director.
I'm so happy to welcome Roz McCummon to our campus. In your email, there was already an introduction that you received. I would like to invite you to come to workshop sessions with her right after this at noon in the choir room, as well as Tuesday and Wednesday at noon in the ad building chapel. Roz, I'd like to invite you to say a few words.
It is, I'm kind of in shock, a little emotional being here right now. This was my life. I felt like I've had so many great memories in this performance area, so it's good to see you guys out there, but we also want to see you back here performing with us in January. I'll be here January 12th through the 19th, but it's for the MLK Day celebration, but what we're doing, most people think it's just, it's black, white, and let's just focus on that. It's of all races. I want to see you come help participate because we're going to need dance, movement. We're going to have rap if you have that talent, if you have spoken word, if you want to come up with anything behind the scenes, but we definitely need you as singers as well to come because I composed some things for orchestra. Some of you haven't played violin in a while. Feel free to let Russell know because we'd love to have you because I have the orchestral parts, but I also wrote an ancestral journey from Africa to America for Dr. King's life, and I would love for you all to be able to participate in that. So we're gonna, again, like you said, we'll be here, and I'll be here until at least Thursday morning or so. Love to see you all come out and participate. Did I forget anything? I feel like I did. That's it? Okay.